Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm just going to run through the program for the day before we get started, as well as some housekeeping notes. So this morning's program will be as follows on your screen. We'll be starting off with Stephanie Lucas, who will give some opening remarks, followed by Maylin Plummer from the Idea Center for Public Gardens. She will be followed by Nick Lazio, one of the Longwood Fellows Program graduates. And then after that, we will have a case study and panel discussion about workforce development. So just some Zoom reminders here. We recommend considering speaker view just to keep everything nice and organized on your screen. The chat feature will allow MSPC staff to share resources and information with you all. And please use the Q&A feature to submit your questions. We will have an opportunity to do some Q&A with some of our presenters. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Stephanie Lucas, and I'm the Deputy Director of Horticulture and Operations at the Madison Square Park Conservancy. The Madison Square Park Conservancy is licensed by the City of New York. We raise 100% of the funds necessary to keep parks clean, green, and safe for the 60,000 visitors we welcome each day. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Madison Square Park's 4th annual Horticulture Symposium, The Future Urban Jungle, Creating a Resilient Workforce. The past 2 years have been challenging times for everyone. We are fortunate to work in an industry that has provided such vital services throughout the pandemic. Our parks, gardens, and public spaces became schools, restaurants, and play spaces overnight. Our more private garden spaces became home offices, safe spaces to meet with friends, and staycation getaways. People started home gardening in a way that they hadn't before. For a few months there, friends and family who never owned a pair of pruners suddenly had an opinion about the correct way to water a monstera, and suddenly there was a new wave of seed starters and propagators in our community. I've never been more strongly convinced of the physical, mental, and environmental benefits of our industry than I was during that first year. But those of us in the green industry have had to maneuver some unique challenges on our own. There were new challenges in navigating work-life balance. Many of us continued to work from the field and take on additional responsibilities to protect those who stayed home. There were so many changes and disruptions to our daily lives, endless organizational changes, supply changes, procedural changes, and on top of that, there was this feeling of loss. We all lost something. Maybe it was your favorite restaurant, a loss of being able to celebrate with friends or family, or even a loved one. And we all process this loss in different ways. The work we do as green industry professionals is so important to the mental and physical health of our communities. Beyond that, we're cultivating the future of our planet, nourishing ourselves and others. Just as we cultivate plants in the environment, it's important that we tend to each other in the green industry. Just as plants have different light requirements, we need to pay attention to the details that make us thrive. We grow stronger as a group together. Just as hidden networks of underground fungi provide nutrients to support physiological plant growth, let us build our own networks of individuals who nurture and enrich the individuals who make our green environments great. It's time we had some self-care so we have the energy to continue the great work that we do. Thank you for taking the time today to grow together. If you're live streaming this session today, I want to remind you that registration is still open on the Madison Square Park website for tomorrow's afternoon in-person session, featuring workshops and some of the tools presented today. ISA CEUs are offered to attendees for both sessions. To obtain credits today, you'll have to stay for the whole session, and we will release a CEU code at the end of the program and ask you to fill out a Google form with your ISA information. Madison Square Park is located on Lenape-Hoking, the ancestral homeland of the Lenape Delaware people. We recognize that this land was forcibly taken, resulting in the displacement and genocide of Lenape Delaware people. Madison Square Park Conservancy respectfully acknowledges the Lenape Delaware people, past, present, and future, who continue to work, live, and connect to this land. The Conservancy honors the Lenape Delaware people, the original stewards of this land, through our commitment to a series of sustainability and restoration initiatives. In the coming years, we aim to reduce our carbon imprint, promote sustainable land management, and reintroduce to the park species of flora and fauna indigenous to Lenape-Hoking. I want to thank the Credit Suisse Americas Foundation, Con Edison, Columbia Property Trust, Sony Corporation of America, Green Acre Foundation, Bailey's Nurseries, the Stanley Smith Horticultural Trust, Madison Green Condominium, and the Rudin family for their support of our horticulture program. It's now my pleasure to turn the program over to Malin Plummer, Director of the IDEA Center for Public Gardens.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. My name is Malin Plummer. My pronouns are she, her. And as Stephanie mentioned, I am director of the IDEA Center for Public Gardens. In IDEA, it stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility. I'm really thrilled to be a part of this symposium. Thank you so much, Jessica, Stephanie, and Ayana for reaching out to me for this opportunity, but also for making me just feel so welcome here. It's always good to be back in the city. So I want to start with talking a little bit about why IDEA and why the center. The short answer is the world is changing. It's ever changing. But before I dive a little deeper into IDEA and relevance, I want to revisit public gardens. So the definition of public gardens is that they are institutions. This is according to, if you look online at any of the dictionaries, but also in some really helpful resources on public horticulture and public gardens, they're defined as institutions that maintain collections of plants for the purposes of public education and enjoyment, in addition to research, conservation, and higher learning, and include public gardens that arboreta, parks, nature conservancies, along with the many botanic and pleasure gardens are all part of this. So as far as the majority of the public, many know them as places of respite, peace, and beauty, places of creative inspiration. But I like you to also think about another aspect, which is that these are physical places that intersect with many aspects of our society. Think about mental and physical health and well-being, education, art and culture, sciences in the spaces of conservation, research, and environmental stewardship, but also economic and community development. And now, more than ever, social justice. But to many of you, and certainly for myself, in our hearts, we are purveyors of joy, wonder, and awe. We are cultivators of curiosity. And there's, I'm sure, many of you who feel the need to save the world. So public gardens matter in a world where natural and green spaces are challenged by development and distance, access to them, right? Green spaces. And often in society, as we are now, and I'm speaking here specifically in the United States and in the Western world, our priorities tend to be connections to things, jobs, status, less so to our connection with each other and to the land and to the wonderful diversity of life on this planet. But I think the pandemic helped to illuminate some of those really basic fundamental desires and needs that we all have. So shouldn't everyone have access to these special places? And not just access, but feel like they belong. So what we do and who we are and who we serve matters. So let's take that thought to another level. I'd like to engage you all in a brief thought exercise. When we talk about public gardens, we have to think about historically, right? And even in the present, who creates them, what's their purpose, and who did they serve? And I want you to think about this initially from a place of the past. When we think about the golden era of botany and botanical exploration, right? This is when conservatories, right, like Kew and others started to pop up. So if we think about who created them and what their purpose was and who they served, these were places of discoveries, showing off exploits, right? Based on a Western view or who felt that they were discovering them, not necessarily the indigenous peoples. There was a lot of curiosity and learning with that, and wanting to share that with others. These were places of pleasure, for places to connect with others, for conversation and for connection. But if we think about who, we're really talking about those of privilege from a place of wealth, but also academics. If you think about that in present day, much of this is still relevant. However, if we think about our purpose, it's starting to shift, or it definitely has shifted, where we're talking about conservation, we're talking about preserving genetics of certain species, protecting species. We're talking about climate change. We're talking about stewardship, and who we're trying to engage has really shifted. We're really being or wanting to be places for all, because we understand that the solution to some of the biggest challenges that we have today will need all of us, right? Not just a certain small population. As far as the future, well, that's to be written. But we have to really think about, as these public spaces, well, who are we, right? And really connect with our identity and connect with, what our purpose is, what we're trying to do, and who we're trying to serve. But there's no question that that legacy from the past, from that colonial period, has carried into the present. And we need to continue to observe and understand those legacies and how we tell those stories into the future. And ultimately, where it kind of puts us right now is in the place of that there's a perception that gardens and nature are for certain people, but not for all. So the relevance and sustainability of public gardens is related to our ability to transform, but also be more open and nimble with understanding who we are and what we do and who we serve. So the Idea Center, there's a lot of momentum now and a sense of urgency as we come out of the pandemic, and a lot of social unrest that is continuing onward. And we want to do better. So I think the launching of the center is timed at the right moment as we seek empowerment and a way forward. And when I think intuitively, we understand that we need unity more than ever. So the IDEA Center was launched in January of this year as a partnership between Denver Botanic Gardens and the American Public Gardens Association, with support and funding through an IMLS grant, IMLS being the Institute of Museum and Library Services. The first thing that we did was try to understand, where are organizations in the world of public horticulture? Where are we in this work? And what are some of the challenges that we're facing? We did a needs assessment. And there was a question, certainly for me, is, well, can we dissolve some of those barriers? Or more importantly, a lot of those barriers have to do with discomfort. So can we become more comfortable with the discomfort? That report can be found on the website, which is www.ideacenterforpublicgardens.org. But to briefly summarize some of those challenges, leadership prioritization and action, diverse recruitment, access to training and resources. And then lastly, a really popular thing was just time and capacity. But I'm going to challenge you all to think about that then in terms back to the first one, which is about prioritization, leadership prioritization and action. So in May, we launched a one-year cohort program of 20 gardens from across the US and Canada. And you can see those organizations listed on the website as well under cohort program. And we had a few requirements to participate: that a board member, the executive director or CEO or equivalent, and staff needed to participate. They need to implement a project during the course of the program, and to attend our monthly sessions, where we bring in various trainers, instructors, experts to have conversations and dialogue on various topics. We are 7 months into this 13-month program, and it is going really great. I look forward to sharing those experiences at next year's conference in Fort Worth, but also to share them on the website as well. Whew, so here we are. As we begin today's talks, I want to add to Stephanie's welcoming and also to help set this tone. In this work, we talk a lot about creating space for safety, courageous conversations, and possibilities. In choosing to be here, I think we've also created a space of intention to be here and to continue onward as change agents. So for that, we celebrate you. And then one of the things that I like to do when we are in group gatherings, whether virtually or in person, is to take a moment to be aware of each other and know that we are all here with good intentions. We are a mosaic of truths, experiences, circumstances, perspectives, opinions, abilities, and ways of understanding. And each of us belongs not to just one group or one identity, but many. So I believe that what we're here for today is really about creating a space of possibilities and opportunities, seeds that cultivate the world we want to create. So I look forward to furthering this conversation tomorrow at the town hall, and I look forward to hopefully meeting many of you in person. And so for now, onward, and I will transition it back to you, Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Malin. That was wonderful, setting us in the right tone. And now it's my pleasure to turn our program over to Nick Lazio, a 2021-2022 Longwood Fellow, who will present the Cohorts Project, Making an Impact, a Toolkit for Advancing Employee Development. So let's give Nick a moment to share his.
Thank you, Stephanie. Are you able to see my presentation now? I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. And here today is one of the 2022 graduating class of Longwood Fellows. And today I'm going to talk with you about our toolkit, Making an Impact, a toolkit for advancing employee development. So alongside of me from left to right is Usman Ibrahim, Katie Sirach, Noemi Hernandez, and Zach Borngraver, who were not able to join me today, but who were with me during the 13-month residential living and working experience that prepares high potential professionals for high impact roles in public horticulture. So this is a unique opportunity that combines in-class coursework with project-based learning and leadership theory that allows for opportunities to test our leadership, not only within the organization, but taking what we have learned and apply it to another garden during a 2-month placement. And now all of this is while working towards completing our cohort project, which addresses a current challenge in public horticulture, with the goal of creating a tangible product for the horticulture industry. So again, this is the rest of the cohort along with me. And we have recently graduated back in June. So when we began our project, we started with brainstorming about issues that have been brought up in one of the previous conferences at APGA, such as succession planning, IDEA, which Malin spoke on, and ways of measuring impact. So from those sessions, we crafted a survey to get a better understanding of what people in the industry were thinking now, especially during the pandemic. Lots of things have changed. So we wanted to get a nationwide perspective and distribute it widely. We got feedback from over 29 gardens and gathered over 300 responses on questions about leadership, retention, recruitment, onboarding, and training and development. And so from our survey, we wanted to answer three main questions. How can public gardens both retain valuable staff members and create opportunities to engage diverse new talent? How can organizations identify high potential employees to fill leadership roles at all levels while advancing community improvement missions? And then finally, what are some of the tools needed to build staff capacity and ensure that gardens continue to thrive for decades? So part of our approach to this project was pretty straightforward. We distributed and analyzed our survey data. We interviewed renowned horticulture leaders who were thought leaders in the field, and we conducted extensive research in organizational theory, focusing on recruitment, onboarding, training, and retention. This toolkit is really designed for mid-level managers to provide data-driven career development resources to cultivate engaged, strategic, and effective employees that are united in achieving organizational goals. So what I'm going to go over today are the four main elements of our toolkit, which is state of the workforce, understanding organizations, employee development, and recruiting and onboarding. So we started by asking who's currently in the industry, because there's a lot of change and movement within the global economy, and public horticulture is a part of this. Today's workforce reflects these changes as it grows increasingly diverse. And so our survey looked at employee demographics, and we found three things that were interesting. First, we noticed that there are a lot of people from 4 generations in public gardens today. Now we know that grouping people in age might be a little bit too general, but we do think that there's enough broad similarities to help managers. For example, we asked why people are motivated to stay in their jobs, and those differences by age revealed some helpful things. So although nearly everyone is motivated by a sense of mission, we found that the youngest workers, those in Generation Z, placed more emphasis on relationship with coworkers than the more general work environment identified with other groups. So if you're a manager, think about how you could assign younger people to teams and projects to help them achieve some healthy relationships at work. Our toolkit also includes some more resources that explore how each group typically likes to work, what they value, and some of the communication styles they prefer, as you can see right here. Second, we found that our industry is filled with lots of highly educated people. Now, this is great because it means we have a lot of smart and well-trained people in our industry, but we do need to be careful that we don't turn this characteristic into a barrier. We know that many talented people build successful horticulture careers through years of experience. Therefore, when you're recruiting new team members, make sure that you're developing interview process that don't exclude experienced candidates who might not have attained formal education. I myself am one of those. I'm a career changer, and I know many people in the industry who are career changers. And we can discuss, and I'll discuss more of that in recruiting and onboarding. Third, we noticed that our survey respondents were less diverse. Now, we know that many public gardens are already working towards improving inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility through idea initiatives like Malin is spearheading. It's important that every garden can work to make sure that people of all races and ethnicities have a place on the team. And you can use our toolkit to help reduce those biases and develop diverse employees. And so when you invest in diverse teams, you really see two important benefits. One, the organization benefits from a variety of perspectives and ideas. This can help gardens drive engaged employees that serve diverse audiences. Second, using idea principles to develop employees helps build a talent pipeline that will not only help position employees in their current role, but help to fill senior level vacancies for years to come. So next, I'm going to talk about how understanding your organization's niche can also help you hone in on what needs to be done for your employee development. So first, think about why your organization exists. What is the mission and what are we trying to accomplish? Second, what is the vision? What do we want to achieve in the future? And then next are values, the values your organization holds, and what behaviors do you value? And really, what are those boundaries within your organization, which also can help you determine what are your true values? Now, this can all help feed into a strategic plan, which will help guide your resources and make sure your employees are aligned with the same goals. And reinforcing your organization's mission, vision, and values can help make sure that everyone understands how their work is meaningful to the mission and vision. So, although many people are motivated by a sense of mission, when we asked what skills employees and managers valued, we found that they both said expertise in the field, which is understandable. You want people who know what they're doing. But when you look at the skills that were valued other than that, we noticed that they're not really hard skills that could be easily trained, but mainly they were soft skills, which can be hard to instill, such as motivation, reliability, teamwork, communication, respect, and transparency. So this means that managers who really want to grow their employees need to look with new eyes. Think about how you can create opportunities for your employees to demonstrate that respect, transparency, and inclusive team development in ways that both enhance the person's promotability and also their role within the organization. So two things you can help develop your system is using KPIs and the smarter approach. So KPI, you break down larger goals into smaller chunks that help you track those changes over time. And just remember to document the process and review that with your employees. Connect with your employees' career development plans so that your organization's strategic goals can be leveraged, both with your employees and the plans going forward. And then with your employees to develop your KPIs like skill development, a new project experience, and think about different ways you can help use that to develop their develop them strategically over time. Using the smarter approach, being specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. And then the ER, which is evaluate and reevaluate, can help make those goals concrete and give you good timelines for that. So here's a sample program plan from our toolkit, which helps you visualize some of the inputs, outputs, and outcomes, which can help you drive your employee development. Just understand that this is a conversation both between managers and employees, not necessarily a top-down thing. So the manager plays an essential role in promoting those mission, vision, and values to employees, communicating how they fit into the larger picture. So it's really the manager's job to make sure that those goals align with the strategic plan and are communicated effectively to employees. So for more to the meat of the toolkit, for employee development, when we surveyed gardens around the country, we really found that employees who feel supported in their career growth feel more committed to their organization and are more willing to expand in their roles. Again, remember that employee development is a partnership. It's a process of finding out where are those best opportunities of growth for each person in a way that connects back to your organization's priorities. And now, while it's true that many employees might not want to advance in their careers, I guarantee you, if they know that they're being supported through opportunities to learn and grow, that increases the odds that you will attract and keep your best talent, benefiting both them and your organization. So we often think of employee development as something that can be expensive, like doing coursework or even going to conferences. I know APGA is not exactly cheap. We found that through speaking with garden leaders around the country, that there were many gardens who don't have the budget to do those type of investments, but they were creative. They were able to find lots of low-cost strategies that you can also use. Things like leading a team discussion. For some people, this can be a really big deal. Another thing you could do is have employees provide training for each other. You know, each person is not the same when you hire them. Some people have unique skill sets that they would be happy to share with the rest of the team. Or they could even be a representative for your organization to external partners. It's really about preparing them for those growth opportunities. So employees who do have those opportunities to learn new things and build new skills will be more engaged and contribute more towards your garden's success. Now, it might take a little bit of time to think through what some of these assignments could be. In our toolkit, we highlighted a few low-cost tools that you could use. One of the ones that you don't really think about so much is just using check-ins between managers and employees to assess, to get back in touch with where they are and have that space for conversations. Still utilizing formal assessments. There's many different assessments you could use, like a 360-degree assessment, or many different tools that you could use. Also, think about mentoring. I know I wouldn't be here today without the mentors I've had, and whether it's a formal mentoring process or introducing people, your employees to other people in your network, mentoring's very helpful for employee development. So as I mentioned earlier about check-ins, one of the surprising things we found in our survey was that check-ins really aren't happening that regularly. And in fact, over half of the respondents were not checking in with their manager less than once a month. But really, it's these informal conversations. If you have a regular time to check in with your employees, to know how they're doing, can help help managers understand what your employees' needs and goals are. Many people are shy and don't necessarily want to speak up, but if you do provide that time for them, you'll be amazed. And so think about, in our survey, one of the top skills that employees were looking for in managers is communication. So really having that regular time is a good first step. And those through those regularly scheduled meetings, it could be maybe once a week, bi-weekly, monthly. It really just depends on your work environment, how many people you have reporting to you. But just having those regularly scheduled meetings can really pay off. Basically, if you think about who is the one who normally comes to meet with you, chat with you in the hall, it's not going to be that shy person. And think about IDEA. With many people, if they're maybe the only diverse person on the team, they really might not be comfortable speaking up. And so having that time for them is also important in fostering equitable access. So for using formal assessments, along with those regular check-ins, can really be a powerful tool that gives employees a sense of where they are in relation to a particular standard. And assessments can help offer up tips to turn results into actionable areas of growth. And also, one of the things that you need to think about is that they are a valuable communication tool because they standardize and depersonalize some of the information, making it easier to spot some patterns and insights, not just based on your latest conversations, but what you've observed throughout the year. There's multiple assessments that your organization could use. One of the surveys that we did when we first started was a comprehensive 360-degree feedback assessment, which for many organizations could be more for like a higher level role. But really the important thing is that the employees need to know who they are and make sure that that knowledge is consistent with what others see. So that can help you foster some honest conversations about their own capabilities and areas of growth. Again, another valuable tool that we found supporting employees' growth was mentoring. When we started the program, we were assigned a mentor. And like I said, I had many other mentors who helped me along the way. But having that formal mentorship program can be really important in supporting the inclusion and diversity going forward. So maybe in that onboarding process, think about who your new employees could be set up with as a mentor, who can mentor them through their new role there in the company and help them grow within the organization. And again, think about creating smarter goals and mentorship. It's not just about conversations, but it is about setting actionable goals and having those mentors help them achieve those goals. So when thinking about investing in training, remember that there's many low-cost ideas that you could use. Some things that I've noticed were that, many organizations were partnering with each other. So for instance, your local extension agent, um, make sure that your employees have time to learn from each other and that they do have opportunities to show off their skills. Think about maybe some seminars that you could bring to your organization to help further your employees' education, or take them to a local garden and learn from other organizations how they're approaching their challenges. So developing the employee skills, keeping them engaged doesn't have to be as expensive. It just takes a little bit of creativity and time. Now, when you think about when you're thinking about hiring new people, I would say that it's especially when you're developing employees, you might not always keep them, and that's okay. And so when you're looking for new people to recruit and onboard those people, some of these tools might help you guide people within your organization to help them understand your mission, vision, and values, and provide them with a guide going forward. So when you first start out, think about how the hiring process is creating a clear position description. Really, this is an opportunity. Now, it's the first chance that you have for your candidate to learn about your organization, to set expectations, and communicate workplace culture. So oftentimes we see that the bar is set far too high in position descriptions, put in everything under the sink that you could possibly imagine that person needing to do. But that can really deter a lot of candidates from even thinking about applying. Take the time to think about what your role is really wanting, what you're wanting that person in that role to really do, and how they might develop within the organization. You can create strategic descriptions of responsibilities and expectations to ensure performance goals are highly visible. And clarity may help you expand your candidate pool and find talent in unexpected places. So one of the tools in our toolkit is a checklist for everything that you might need when writing a position description. And that would help you develop your description so you can find great employees. So thinking about also where you place your job description is really important. I know many people in the public garden space post their job ads to APGA, but depending on who you're trying to attract, that's not going to necessarily attract the most diverse audience. There's many different websites out there that are free or free based. Even thinking about reaching out to local colleges and universities, other local community websites, or even cultural organizations can go a long way into helping make sure that you can create a diverse team and not just the same people that you have now. Now, when you finally get a list of candidates, thinking about how you interview is really important as well. We have a tool, one of the tools in our toolkit also addresses this, which will help you review desired skills and competencies, making sure that your organization's mission and values are reflected in your interview, and also making sure that you have a structured base to go off of so that things are not haphazard going forward, and making sure there's some continuity from one position description to the other, which can help really reduce some biases and ensure equity and fairness. So now that you've identified your candidate, we provided some onboarding tips to help your new hire build a long-term organization relationship. Remember to listen and engage. Communication is essential, and creating the environment of openness to foster that relationship. Again, with check-ins and regular communication. And set them up for success. Make sure that they have some training along with their onboarding procedures. Provide them with guidance on the policies and procedures, and expose new hires to different experiences. Share your organization's operations and culture, maybe to commit even to social gatherings to help engage your employees. And you can use our onboarding assessment to document and work with those new employees. It provides questions to ask in the first 30, 60, and 90 days of work. And as a manager, decide how you want to make an impact on your employee. Do you want to be a mentor, a support system, a motivator, or just to get the job done? Reflect on what you want personally for the organization and for your employees. Now, this can help you goal set and prioritize your time and energy into creating a positive workplace environment for your employees and yourself. So, in conclusion, you should remember that really our toolkit is a starting place for developing tools to utilize for employee development, which can be adaptable and just be thought of as a starting point in the process. Now, working on employee development plans don't have to be discouraged if your first attempts don't work out. Really, the important part is that you've just started the process. And we all need to start somewhere. And hopefully this toolkit will provide some guidance and resources to support your employees' career development and contribute to your organization's success. And again, we have copies online. If you go to Longwood Fellows website and look under cohort projects, you'll see not only our project and our toolkit, but you'll also see the previous fellows toolkits or projects, so that you can also utilize that in your organization's development. Again, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of what we've gone over in our toolkit. Again, check it out. Make sure that if you have any questions, just give me an email, or any of the other fellows an email, and we'd be happy to help you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Nick. I know Stephanie added the link in the chat to the toolkit, so please take some time to look at it. It's absolutely wonderful. Nick, we have some time, so we do have some questions. So I'll start with, can you explain more about what the KPI and smarter methods mean?
Yes, so in many organizations, especially if you're in higher level management, you want to make sure that you want to have measured results. So KPIs and the smarter approach kind of go hand in hand, really, because with the smarter approach, it makes sure that your goals are specific. Make sure that those goals have some kind of actionable results and timeline. And I would say that working through that process really helps illuminate some of the things that you're not thinking about, which would go into creating your KPIs. KPIs, I would say, are more of an overview of the whole organization, whereas the SMARTer goals are more individualized.
Okay, great, thank you. So someone had a question about who was surveyed. Was it simply leaders or managers, or were all gardeners surveyed? And did this include even new and temporary gardeners and other landscape workers?
Yes, it included people across the industry. We use several platforms to distribute our survey. We distributed that through some horticulture Facebook groups. We also were in the APGA community boards and distributed a survey through that. And then we also communicated with, like I said, about 30 gardens executive leaders, so that what they did was they had a link to our survey and then they distributed to the rest of their employees. And I would say that that's probably why in our survey results, we have very few respondents from probably the Gen Z, because if we think about it, probably a lot of people who are in Gen Z are maybe part-time workers, don't have an employee email. We still encourage that, but I think that that demographic was not surveyed as well because of that.
Thank you. I think that explains it a lot better. Someone asked, what is APGA?
Yes, that's American Public Garden Association. I encourage anyone in the horticulture industry to be a part of APGA. We do have there's a yearly conference, which we presented our cohort project to, and each successive cohort also goes to APGA to present their project findings. And there's many community boards that range from, plant curation to like horticulture management, which really is like a platform to help people share information. I really encourage anyone to get in there because there's lots of people who are heavily involved in that.
Great. So since you all came out with the toolkit, have you been able to share it back with different organizations and institutions? And if so, do you have any plans to follow up after a certain amount of time?
Yeah, so I'm pleasantly surprised, like the reception that we've gotten. I think because of our toolkit, we do have, your organization's been looking through it. I know I've shared it with my organization, the Architect of the Capitol in DC, who are starting to implement some of the things that we found in our toolkit. And yeah, I've gotten really great responses from people saying that they're already using some of the tools. And I would say, when we go to the next APGA conference, I'm going to be surveying people to see, people within the wider industry, how they've been using our toolkit.
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll spread as people network too and kind of share the benefits that they've seen through your toolkit. I'm sure a lot of people will be using it. What was the most surprising finding during your research to you?
I mean, I would say what was very surprising, but also not, was some of the demographics. Like I knew it was fairly white, but not like that white. And
Yeah.
I think that really goes to who feels comfortable in the space and who can see a career in this industry. And I'll be honest, I didn't see myself in this industry for a while. I started out in finance. I had a passion for horticulture, but it can feel very exclusive. And I would say that through networking, through getting to know these organizations and see where there might be some possible career paths is when I finally got excited about it. So I think the younger we can get people involved in public gardens, I think the better we'll be as an industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's definitely more space to have more conversations around that. Someone asked if you have any experience or advice on what a successful employee research group or ERG application from staff to leadership might look like for an organization that wants to support ERGs. Have you seen resistance from organizations supporting ERGs?
So through some of the conversations that I've had with, executives in different public gardens, there was, I wouldn't say resistance, but there was sort of a feeling of like people who maybe were a gardener or maybe even just a supervisor might not have some of the skills that they need to be more in those, like the C-suite kind of level or the executive level. I would say that that's some of what the Fellows Program is trying to bridge. Longwood has a lot of different programs to help people kind of up their education. And I would say that it's really the larger organizations where you have a lot more levels and it's not such a horizontal employee structure. There is a little bit more room to kind of move around. The best approaches I've seen really have been kind of what we're talking about today, where you are helping them grow, giving them like great leadership opportunities, and you do that even with the fact that they probably won't stay with your organization, because especially in smaller organizations, people might stay in those higher level positions for longer. But what we realized was that there's actually a lot of times where people might go out to another organization. They've got those leadership skills in their current organization, but then maybe 5 years later, 10 years later, they might actually come back to your organization after they've gotten to a higher level. So just keeping those lines of communication open and within the community is very helpful. And that's why I wholeheartedly support APGA, because it really helps foster a great community.
Great, thank you. Going back to your previous career, someone was curious what your career change was from and why.
Yes, so I started out in finance. I got my finance degree, and really during that time that I was getting my degree, I was working at a public garden. It was still a passion of mine at that time, but I just didn't see myself having a career in it, especially given the notorious stigma of the low pay in the industry. I was not very enthusiastic about thinking about that. But I think what really changed my mind was going to some of the talks like what we're doing today, seeing how there's like these really great opportunities for people in the industry that you might not think about, like being a plant breeder, or some of these people who like explore, they go across the world and explore and like bring back plants. A lot of that, like Malin said, not so much as like acquiring, but more as like for conservation and research. Especially it puts into the ornamental horticulture industry. And so really I was inspired to do that. I went to China and taught over there and got connected with people who were plant exploring. And then that kind of helped facilitate my network. And when I came back, I started working at the National Arboretum, and that was like a dream come true for me to do this. I still didn't have any of the qualifications. I was like there as a contractor. But it did take me about 3 or 4 years to get to the point where I had all the qualifications for a good job, and then like this opportunity with the Fellows Program to see public gardens at a higher level.
Great. And I do want to, someone actually asked a question about the stigma of low pay. So I think I'll go to that one. How do we as an industry address the stigma of low pay, especially given the historical level of education in the industry?
Yeah, so that is a good question. From what I've seen, it is definitely something that is being talked about at the higher level throughout the nation, especially with some of the larger gardens, about how to address increase in pay. A lot of those organizations are private and they're able to support that pretty easily. Some of the organizations that I've seen, many of which are associated with some government organization, like whether it be state, local, community. I've found that some of the executives they're looking to create like more specialized roles or higher level roles. So it's not just being a gardener. Maybe they would hire a turf specialist or a turf manager or an arborist that is more competitive, and that can like help set a higher pay. Because I think when they try to do like just the catch-all gardener, that is usually a low paid position. But from what I've seen too is that if you use that kind of entry-level job as a way to not, as part of that is like you're not asking for that much education, then when they're in the organization, they can help further their education and then work towards getting a more specialized role. And so, like I said, with the employee development, really that's like, how can you help map people's career progression to something that will help them command a higher pay?
Yeah, I think this is a really interesting conversation, and I'd actually like to bring Mei Lin back in. I know this is something that she has been looking into extensively. So just to add to the conversation, please go ahead, Mei Lin.
Thank you, Jessica. And Nick, you're so right. I think that the area you're speaking about is really putting some intention around professional development, right? And really calling out the level of skill and education that horticulturists and gardeners have. And I think that that's a very important area of, I think, like intention and focus that organizations will in pursuing or in doing that will cause like other organizations to kind of revisit and interrogate, like, well, why do we have certain entry-level positions, or where can we actually advocate that there are skills and expertise that are involved in being a horticulturist and a gardener. So I think that that's one area. I think that the other part is really around, those organizations that have the ability and have the capacity to really start to advocate for the value and the worth, like really looking at our organizations as a business. So providing that professional development, but also really advocating for those kind of skills, but also saying that that we have to create various entrance points and be able to willing to train those who come in at different levels, so that we're also not creating a barrier with the education, right? The professional education, because I think that there are many that come into this indirectly or not from a traditional path, but it doesn't mean that they're still not developing a skill. So I think we have to really just kind of assess and really interrogate that just a little bit more. And I think that there's another really important piece to this as well. When it comes to organizational leadership, boards and others, we have the power to raise others up. We have a change in thought that I think sometimes that we need to take. This is where the nonprofit kind of paradigm and philosophy, right? This is so historically entrenched in nonprofits in the United States. It's the whole give the shirt off your back belief, right? And that we have to do this, and that, it's just a nice thing to be able to work in a garden. It's a privilege to work in a garden. And while that is really lovely and true, we don't want to suppress those. So the people who are out there who are interested in working in our organizations, if we continue to keep those wages and that compensation low, then we'll really continue to suppress, right, that diversity that we're really looking for, bringing people in. So I think that there is this kind of belief and like thought change that needs to happen. And so look at really what can we do to provide better compensation, and looking at it in different ways as well. I think it does take time as organizations to develop the funding sources that can help to build those that kind of raise the salary. But we have to also look at, well, how can we continue to educate and train those so that we can lift them up? How can we continue to develop their expertise and their skill? How can we help to contribute to the change in the perception that there is skill and education and expertise in the work that we do, right? So I think there's important work for leadership and boards to take when it comes to helping to change those perceptions and not to continue that kind of paradigm of belief. So that's a lot that I threw out there, but I think about this and talk about this a lot. And I will say this, that organizations that have the ability and the framework to be able to change that, I think that this is where rising tides lift all boats. Denver Botanic Gardens has done a lot over the past few years to really uplift and share the benefits of our growth across the entire organization. So there are other organizations, and this is a call to action, I think, that others can take. And if we have the power and the ability to do it, then it's, to me, not a question of if, it's the right thing to do, and when can we do this, and how can we change how we think and how we design our programs and how we uplift others. I'll stop talking about it because I can talk about it all day.
Yeah, I think this is that was a great conversation. Thank you both so much. I think this is the perfect place to end it here as we move into our workforce development panel. I think it is a perfect segue to finish here. So thank you so much, Nick, and thank you, Maylin, as well. And I will pass it to Ayana to introduce our panel.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ayana. I'm the Horticulture Associate here at Madison Square Park, and I want to thank you all for joining us. It's my pleasure to introduce you to the panelists we have here that's going to be discussing workforce development. So we're joined by Tonya Gale, coming to us from Green City Force. We have Alexander Bender from Trilocks, Scott Pelzer from Brooklyn Woods, and Renee Rule from the HOPE program. So Tonya, we're going to start things off with you. We're ready when you are.
All right, good morning, everyone. Let me just share my screen real quick. Can you all see that? Yes? Sorry, I can't.
No.
No, okay, hold on. Share, sorry. Okay. Now can you see it?
We can see it. It's not in
Okay.
presenter. There you go.
There we go. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. As I'm Tonya Gale. I'm Executive Director of Green City Force. Happy to be with you all today. I'll tell you a bit about our program for those that may not know. Green City Force is a nonprofit focused in New York City, and we train young leaders in public housing communities to get green careers and opportunities in the green economy. The majority of the folks that we partner with are young adults from New York City housing authorities, where pre-pandemic, over 70% reported unemployment. And we do, through national service as an AmeriCorps program, workforce training that not only transforms communities where our participants come from, but also builds their workforce skills so that they can be competitive for jobs upon completion of the first phase of our program. We believe that National Purpose is a platform for service learning that is a viable alternative to traditional steps through economic mobility. And we've been doing this since 2009 in partnership with NYCHA and many others. And we focus on low-income young drivers of these communities to create change and solutions. We have a two-step part of our model, which is bringing in 18 to 24-year-old residents of public housing who have completed high school or equivalency. They serve as AmeriCorps members for either 6 or 10 months, and they're doing skills building while they're doing direct service on the ground. And the whole end game of this model is that they are viable and competitive for jobs upon completion. And so we have a team on staff that works to create partnerships with employers to continue apprenticeship and training opportunities for the young people to continue on their career path once they've completed their initial exposure working with us. Our lens is very much from a racial justice, economic justice, and environmental justice perspective. The majority of our participants, they're all frontline BIPOC young adults who have been systemically left out of all kinds of opportunities. And so our model is about disrupting bad models in the past that have had severe consequences on the communities that we focus on. We are what we consider to be the civilian climate corps of NYCHA. This is a picture of one of our cohorts at one of our sites in Canarsie, at one of our farm sites in Bayview Houses. And we have a vision about a future green city where everyone is tying into opportunities, and there's an ecosystem that's like not just job training, but workforce training and racial justice and solutions coming from the actual communities that are hardest hit by environmental injustice. A lot of our physical work is designed on platforms that are urban farms that we call eco-hubs. And we call them eco-hubs because they're food producing. We grow and distribute food to public housing residents on currently 6 sites across public housing in all 5 boroughs. And on top of the farm production and food production, we are building solar installations, composting, recycling initiatives, green infrastructure, with the goal of continuing workforce development for the young people, connecting with the community, providing food and access, and transforming these open spaces that we basically consider to be like open community centers. That translates from spaces that were previously either unused concrete spaces, negative use spaces into these community hubs of sustainability around food, water, waste, and energy. If you want to learn a little bit more details, you're welcome to take a shot of this QR code. We have a lot more details here, but I'll just keep going. Just quickly, I'm just going to give you some visuals so you can get a sense of the impact. These are visuals of our eco hubs across the 5 boroughs. As I mentioned, we've grown over 150,000 pounds of fresh food and distributed to the community members in locations where we serve. This is just some numbers on folks that come to see us with our weekly farm stands where we distribute food. We also do compost collection. We ask residents to come and bring their food scraps in exchange for the farm stand produce that we provide for them, so that we're putting the Eco Hub system back into creating compost that's being used for the actual farm. So it's all local solutions. We've also done work tied to tree inventory to address the issues of heat island effect in low-income communities. These are just different examples of the sustainability initiatives that we've been focused on. You know, again, building skills towards green jobs. These are an overview of the snapshot of the different types of opportunities that folks get once they complete our program. And all of this is a holistic model built on cohorts and community and collective impact. And so this is an image of us training new members in a boot camp scenario. We use Jimenez principles in our programming and culture, a lot of community building focused on liberation and naming the harms of white supremacy and other barriers that have been restrictive, so that it's a space where people can navigate in the outside economy and capitalism, while also hope and healing and supporting each other in addressing the real challenges that they face collectively. Here's a picture of us in a community meeting where we share feedback and hopes and aspirations in a community space, which we do once a week as part of our programming for the young people. And then this is just an image of our team collectively. We had a retreat at Governor's Island a few months ago, which is, you know, necessary for healing and supporting folks to be able to keep doing the work, because we know every day it's a battle, but it's a strong and motivating experience. So we try to take time out to focus on wellness when we can. And yeah, that's a quick overview of what we do at Green City Force. Thanks.
Alrighty, now we're going to hand it over to Alexander and Scott. They're going to talk a bit more about their arrangement that they have.
Hello, everybody. Can you all see my screen? Excellent. Just want to start off by saying thank you to Madison Square Park Conservancy. It's wonderful to be joining you all today, to be a part of this conversation. Honored to be amongst my fellow panelists here. And thank you to all of you who are taking the time to participate in today's event. So before we dive in, I just want to give some brief context about Trilox, who we are, and why we are involved in building wood reuse systems in New York City. Trilox sources wood in ways that are reactive rather than extractive. We take a research-driven approach that prioritizes reuse and forest health. And we began this work reclaiming wood from deconstruction projects, including agricultural and industrial structures, as well as decommissioned New York City water towers. Over the past couple of years, Trilox has been working to create a system of reuse for New York City trees. And as stewards of the urban forest, we are really system builders and strong advocates for forging strong relationships amongst stakeholders and policies that support good practices and keep our city green. And we are proud Forest for All NYC coalition members alongside Madison Square Park Conservancy and many of my fellow panelists today. As horticultural experts here, you are all probably well aware of the critical role that our New York City trees play in our health and well-being. I won't run through all of those amazing benefits, but we know that they are strong. And what question that I'll just pose here is what happens when a tree is removed? Currently, the life cycle management of a New York City tree ends at the point of removal. And the tree is chipped and either used for mulch or disposed of in landfills. However, if tree management included evaluating and salvaging for timber, the purpose of our trees would extend beyond the point of removal. And by establishing a new source of locally grown, locally manufactured wood, we create the potential for a commercially viable circular economy that lowers New York City's carbon output and brings opportunities for environmental education and local green jobs. So this gives you all a visual of, actually, I'm just gonna, these are just some quick statistics and a visual of what some of the logs from New York City trees look like. But here, I'm just gonna show you all a visual for what the circular system that we are building and how it differs from business as usual. Actually, let me just go on to the next slide here. Okay, so here you can see the circular system here versus business as usual. There are some incredible opportunities for local green jobs throughout every step of this process. And this is essentially, changing the waste stream to a stream of reuse. Today, we'll be focusing on the end of this circle with the pilot project that we're doing and the curriculum that we've developed. So each opportunity for city wood salvage is a unique set of circumstances that require flexible and responsive and mobile solutions. Being able to salvage the trees from Maya Lin's Ghost Forest at Madison Square Park, for example, which was an exhibit focused on the fragile state of our ecosystem, was the perfect opportunity to both respond to Lin's really moving work, but also to expand our mission of salvage and reuse. And here, these trees, in this case cedar, were salvaged and brought to a local organization, nonprofit called Rocking the Boat, where they were used to build boats as part of their program. So we integrated the same tree salvage and reuse practices for the deconstruction of this art installation. We're able to bring it to this great local organization and create educational opportunities for teenagers to learn about the process of sourcing and milling the material for their boats and carry out their broader environmental education program out on the water of New York City. Trilux has been working with Brooklyn Woods, a division of Brooklyn Workforce Innovations. We're joined by Scott Peltzer, who will follow me here with more information. But we're doing that to build a curriculum that augments their existing woodworking training program, and the curriculum provides trainees with firsthand experience of the process that turns logs into lumber. In other words, it really explains what happens before the wood gets into the workshop, and it provides a foundation in sustainable wood sourcing for everyone that is beginning their woodworking careers. Just that's a real quick snapshot about what we're doing in terms of changing the system in New York City from one of waste to one of reuse and applying our specialization in sustainable wood and woodworking. But before I pass it over to Scott to talk more about Brooklyn Woods, I'll just say that this pilot project that we're doing here is revealing that an entirely new pipeline of local green jobs is possible. if this system becomes implemented in a more permanent and substantial way. We're currently learning more about that. It will require our community and policymakers to commit to new sustainable practices and to invest in infrastructure. Scott, I'm going to pass it to you here to continue talking about our work.
Okay.
And show some visuals of this work.
Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Peltzer, founder and director at Brooklyn Woods. And then Alexander, if you could just skip to the next slide for me. Great. So just a little bit of background about Brooklyn Woods. So we were founded in 2000, and we are a program of Brooklyn Workforce Innovations since 2006. And in the 22 years that we've been in operation, we've trained over 1,200 individuals for entry-level jobs in woodworking, fabrication, and manufacturing sectors of New York City's economy. And this also includes quite a few sort of gardening and outdoor space architects and builders as well. Primarily since the pandemic was when we really started seeing an uptick in interest from gardeners. So it's a 7-week project-based training course, and we give participants sort of hands-on experience with hand tools, power tools, and basic woodworking machinery. In addition to that, they get a 40-hour OSHA training, and we go into shop math and measurement, and a job readiness training component is also included. Upon graduation, we provide 2 years of job placement assistance after graduation. So if someone is laid off or a job comes to an end, then they can come back to us and we will assist them in continuing to find employment in the field. So in the last 2 fiscal years, we've enrolled about 116 individuals, graduated 95 of those at about an 82% graduation rate, and placed 77 of those graduates into jobs averaging a starting hourly wage of about $18.50 an hour. We have been a partner with Trilocks for many years, and they've hired, I think, probably 7 or 8 of our graduates over the years, and then currently there are 4 of our graduates working in their shop. Next slide. In addition to the training program, we also run a social venture cabinet business, and this business allows us to hire our graduates to provide an additional on-the-job training to give them additional experience and really boost their confidence so that they're willing to go, or they're ready to go out into the field and not just obtain that job, but keep it and continue to work in the field for a number of years. The focus of the social venture business has been to really give our graduates those additional working opportunities. We've also always had a sustainability sort of outlook on the products that we manufacture. So when we first started out, we started out building kitchens for Habitat for Humanity, and they were interested in developing their kind of green building practices, and I was interested in developing a green cabinet spec. So we kind of worked together to develop a kitchen cabinet spec that was FSC certified, no added urea formaldehyde, and used all low VOC finishes. So we sort of, and this was in about 2002 that we first started doing that type of work. So we've always been interested in sustainability and in the built environment being a healthier place for people to live. We also have done quite a few projects using reclaimed materials, more furniture projects, but also a material that we work with a lot. And next slide. So the work with Trilocks and being part of the milling of the trees from the Parks Department really kind of fits into the early part of our training program where we really focus on the materials. So we have a module that talks about solid wood and wood technology. And how does solid wood behave, and what does it look like, and where does it come from? So it's really great experience. We spend 2 to 4 days with each cycle on the site, and the students get to see how material is cut from a tree, and how the area that the tree is or that the wood is cut from a tree affects how it behaves, how it moves, and how it expands and contracts, and what does the surface, what does the figure of the surface of the wood look like when it comes from a particular part of the tree. So it's a great kind of hands-on, visual and experiential part of the training for our participants, and they love it. It's really they have fun. It also gives us the opportunity to do some team building, and it's important for us not just to be able to assess the skills of the hard skills of our graduates, but we also need to be able to see and understand how they work in a team, what their personalities are like, what do they what are their tendencies when they're working in a group, because it gives us an idea about the individual. And when we know the environment that we're placing them in, and we try to get to know our employers very well as we make the matches, we can give a really detailed evaluation of each individual to the employer to really make that strong and lasting match. So we're interested in not just placing people, but in placing people for the long term. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexander and Scott. Just want to say I came across the Brooklyn program like years ago, and I've shared it with a bunch of folks who have been at Career Crossroads. So last but not least, we have Renee Rule, who I've had the pleasure with working with Enforce for All. So we're just going to turn it over to her.
Thank you. Can you all see that? Yes, you can all see that? Okay, well, I make what Alexander said. I just want to thank Madison Square Park Conservancy for inviting me, and happy to be speaking and to be working with talking with the fellow panelists. So I am Renee. I am the project manager of HOPE's programs, Green Infrastructure and Horticulture Programming. And our mission is to empower New Yorkers to build sustainable futures through comprehensive training, jobs advancement, and lifelong career support. And to give a little bit of an overview of who we are, we have a suite of programs. We have about 6 programs, 5 of which are focused more in the green sector. So we have our Sustainable South Bronx, our HVAC program, we have a yield program, and then we have 2 of our programs that we refer to as our transitional employment program, focusing more on urban heat island effect and climate change issues. So it's our Cool Roofs program and also our Intervine program. And so just a quick overview of HOPE's impact. We have trained up to 378 participants, and we have a placement rate of 78%. And then over 90 days, the 90-day job retention is 88%. And then 1 year, we have a retention of 73%. And we really attribute a lot of this impact on our wraparound services, which we refer to as our toolkit of success, where we're really, it's a foundation of all of our programs, and these supportive services are assisting in permanent employment for participants as well as work wellness. And so just sort of today, just talking primarily about our green jobs training with those wraparound services, we're contributing to the sustainability of New York City overall. And we primarily work in the Bronx by, creating and maintaining green space through the work that's done by the training participants, our cohorts. And it's a paid training program with a sector focus on green techniques. And they're gaining the industry certifications that really help launch them into that's going to help them enter into a job. And working out in the field provides the work experience that is relevant to the work that they're interested in the green sector. And then it's also like a networking opportunity and linking participants to career pathways in the green sector. And so I'm going to focus a little bit on two of our programs that are more focused on horticulture, and it's our Intervine program. And this has been in operation since 2018, and it provides paid transitional employment opportunities for low-income job seekers in green infrastructure and maintenance over a course of 10 weeks. And so there's stewardship projects, i.e. on-the-job training, work engagements, and they're primarily conducted in the South Bronx. And that, for those of you that are familiar with New York City, this is a region with limited green space and disproportionate environmental challenges. And part of this programming also is we focus on lessons in environmental literacy and environmental justice issues that specifically impact this community. And then they complete the hands-on work to, directly have an impact on solving some of these issues. And then we have our Youth Build program, which is a fairly new program, primarily for 18 to 24-year-olds. It's a 20-week program where they're also gaining the essential skills, the hard skills, leadership opportunities, but also high school equivalency preparation. And so the last year, we've had 2 cohorts that was focused more on construction, but we launched 3 weeks ago, the first program where we're focusing more on horticulture. And so we're sort of Intervine meets Youth Build and providing our Intervine model with our Youth Build programming. And so just to give an overview of what those environmental literacy classes are, talking about environmental justice and the disproportionate green access to green space, the disproportionate access to healthy food, and then just the environmental burdens that often are, again, disproportionate and not in the best way. And then we have our climate change class talking about sea level rise, urban heat island effect, and just talking about mitigation and adaptation and what that means. And then our green infrastructure solutions. So after we've painted the bleak picture of where we are, just sort of talking about different solutions with green infrastructure practices that can help, try to address these issues and help to slow them down. And then we have our everyday sustainability class where everyone breaks out into a group and gives a presentation on different ways in which they can be more sustainable in their everyday lives. And then as part of the horticulture programs, providing an introduction to horticulture, what that means, a lot of terms that a lot of different ecological garden practices as sort of and all of this is a foundation before they go out into the field. So the hands-on training is what a lot of our participants come for. And so really working out in the community, whether it's, litter abatement, laying down mulch or planting, doing plant installations. These are just some of the things that we do in the community, and it allows them to gain the essential skills to work a team, as Scott was saying, similarly, and then also just really connecting to the community. A lot of times our participants they're aware, they experience a lot of the challenges in their communities, but then they don't realize how many people are contributing to trying to, resolve some of these issues, and they feel like they empowered by having an impact and seeing a transformation, even just in a short period of time. And so similar to Scott, we have a social enterprise where, this allows our participants that complete the program to continue on to gain more experience, to be paid in either short-term or long-term projects. And these are some examples of some things that we're doing in the community. And then born out of COVID, we partnered with 3 watershed organizations, the Gowanus Canal Conservancy, Bronx River Alliance, and Newtown Creek Alliance. And we created what we call the RAIN Coalition. So it's Rain Garden Action in Neighborhoods. And so we came together because these 3 watersheds, they drain to the most polluted New York City waterways. And these watershed communities there's a big impact of multiple environmental injustices, whether it's CSOs, flooding, high poverty, impaired air quality, extreme heat. And so we came together to pilot a program. We are maintaining rain gardens across respective watersheds to come up with, test some of the maintenance and strategies, and is in the hopes of getting a long-term contract to really do work in strategic green career, like job creation, because a lot of times the rain gardens, they're not always able to be maintained just because of resources, and a lot of times there's a volunteer stewardship that is a part of the maintenance, but obviously we all value our volunteers, but we also know that this work can be sometimes more technical, and so we believe that this could be a job creation opportunity, and try to create them to be more year-round season rather than just seasonal jobs. And then just again, kind of talking about how can we all be contributed to be creating a stronger network, and a lot of it is so much through our career partners, our community partners. Like, this is opportunities for our graduates to, again, see the work that different organizations are doing, and it provides sort of an educational component, and not only just seeing the problems, but seeing that there is work and solutions trying to be implemented, and then just creating a career pathway for careers in this work. And so those are just ways in which we work with our partners, again, just like on-the-job training engagements, our social enterprise, and our internships, and then permanent employment. And then just to summarize, our workforce development is critical to any environmental sustainable solution. We see the opportunities to leverage initiatives to build a stronger workforce, and we know volunteering stewardship alone will not grow a green economy, and then the co-benefits of this work has exponential impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your work. I think everyone is a little bit better for learning about what you all are doing. If you haven't put your questions in the Q&A feature, please do so. I'm going to get started with a few questions for our panelists, and then we'll move into some from the audience. So I'd like to start with the start of COVID. Obviously, we're still in it. What have been the difficulties your programs have had, and what are the ripple effects from what's going on with the COVID situation? Tanya, if you'd like to start.
Sure. Yeah, I cringe every time somebody says post-pandemic, because in our reality and community, sadly, things are way better than they were 2 years ago. But the pandemic has had an exponential challenge to the young people and the communities we serve. At the beginning, we're mostly like everyone here, direct service, and to have to pull away from community and their highest points of need was very, very challenging, especially tied to food production. And so we had some real ethical decisions to make in real time about, on the one hand, wanting to step up and serve the community, and on the other hand, not wanting our participants, who themselves are frontline community members, exploited or put in danger in order to serve. So the virtual experience for a while was painful. We were able to raise funds for some cash assistance for some of our graduates who were supposed to start work and then were on pause because they're first to hire, last to hire, first to fire. So there was a lot of real time, not just health and loss of life and economics, but like expectations of a path that got taken away because of the pandemic. So the good news is we've been very, very intentional about doubling down on the community engagement. Like, once it's been possible for us to be in person again and connect again, those community meetings that I talked about, like critical moments of connectivity, is what makes the community strong. So we're heading back in the right direction, but we've been challenged by, as an organization, retention and recruitment. And then on the individuals, it's just been incredibly traumatic and emotional need for robust, more mental and emotional support. We created a wellness program led by graduates as a result of COVID that's really empowering and inspiring, but it was like a need. It was like a need that had to be addressed, and thankfully our members were able to address that. So there's much more work to do, but the mental and traumatic experience has been real and consistent and has not ended, and it's going to be a long ripple effect for us to try to solve for that. So yeah, that's what's been happening in our community.
Would anybody else like to kind of talk to their challenges with COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I will mirror a lot of what Tanya said. I mean, that was definitely something we experienced. You know, there was a lot, like our participants, they experienced a lot of loss. And there was a lot of, you know, not just the financial hardships, but there was just the mental challenge, the mental health challenges. And so we were able to also have cash assistance where we were able to provide a lot of the equipment or the needs that people needed to be able to go to jobs, but also just those fundamentals of you know, food and shelter. And so that was definitely something that hope in that we did. And then just the mental health, like we had case management and wellness support as part of our programming, but that was just, it just grew exponentially and had to provide a lot more, you know, short-term counseling, long-term counseling. And that was definitely just one of the biggest challenges of just that mental health support.
Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question. Thank you so much for sharing about that. I know it's been very challenging for a lot of us. How do most of your potential trainees find your programs? I know a lot of people might not have the knowledge that you guys exist. So I was curious how people find you. Alexander, would you like to start?
Well, I have a bit of a unique response in that we find a lot of our trainees and entry-level employees through relationships with really great local workforce development organizations like those that I'm speaking with on the panel today. So we really rely on you know, working together and creating a pipeline of for a workforce in the unique work that we do and our community to grow our business. And it's a bit of a unique approach, but we feel like it is a significant part of our mission and our potential impact. So yeah.
Scott, would you like to answer that question as well?
Sure. Yeah. So recruitment is always a challenge. It is continually one of our biggest challenges. And so, you know, through the years, we've relied on partnerships with government agencies as well as, you know, local politicians' offices, and then a large network of community-based organizations that can refer people to us. Lately, it's been a lot of the traffic coming to us has been online. We found that our sort of social media platforms have helped to drive some participants to us, and word of mouth. So it's sort of anywhere we can get people, we get people, and we try to get people. You know, Craigslist was a source for us for a long time, and that's tapered off a little bit. But yeah, it's right now it seems to be online is sort of the biggest area that we get our referrals from.
Tanya, Renee, would you like to comment on that?
Sure. The most robust success is when it's word of mouth through graduates, whether they're referring family members or friends or people in their communities. We work very closely with the Housing Authority, with their communications team, and then like everyone else, partnerships are critical, workforce, government partners, local community-based partners. We have a recruitment team that are graduates that go into the field. We work closely with the Reese department at NYCHA. And then, you know, absolutely social media and recruitment, but also when we're in service in communities, you know, there might be a parent or a relative that comes to a farm stand, and part of the model is like, how can we get your family to be getting these jobs that you see these young people doing? So it's a mixture of, you know, boots on the ground, flyering and messaging, as well as, you know, technology and wherever. And we're looking to build up our technology outreach going forward and marketing.
Yeah, and I'll echo very similar in all of what Tanya said. But then also just well, sometimes it might be substance abuse facilities, it might be you know, might be federal state departments for pretrial or parole, but definitely a lot of word of mouth as well. And it's I echo what Tanya said. It doesn't every single time we are out in the field, there's at least one or two people that ask about our program, and we give them flyers. And so and have a recruitment team that works really hard in just getting the word out about who we are.
Great, thank you. My next question is for Alexander and Scott specifically. What do you see as the future of woodworking and fabrication in New York City?
Shall I begin?
Sure, yeah.
You know, I think that today woodworking and fabrication is fewer and far between than it has been in the past in New York City. Industrial zoning in the city has shrunk significantly. Just costs of operating in New York City are very high, and so it's a challenge to be manufacturing and doing woodworking in the city. But it does come with benefits for us. We are not only sourcing our workforce, but sourcing our materials from the community, and it's part of who we are. So it's important to us. I think that it's important that if the city wants to retain manufacturing and woodworking, that there is an effort and some policies or incentives that can be instituted to keep it vibrant. But I think it's a great source of local green jobs and careers, really, and skills that are also translatable to other jobs. And woodworking is something that really, once you start, you really it's addictive. You really want to learn more, and it's a lifelong pursuit. It's a craft that is very fulfilling, and you can always be learning. So that's one of the reasons why we come back and do it every day.
Yeah, I would just add to that by saying that you know, our architectural woodworking, custom cabinet making is always going to be a part of New York City's economy, I believe, because it's driven by the real estate market, and it's driven by the need for and the need for renovations and the money that's here in New York to sort of drive that. You know, it fluctuates, it goes up and down with the market. But from a job placement perspective, you know, we've tried to diversify so that we're not just training for cabinet making and furniture making, but that we can train people for other sort of manufacturing sectors, and the skills that we train are transferable. But in terms of providing trained employees to this sector, you know, historically, the employment of the sector has been fed by immigration. So it was the Italians, and then it was the Irish, and then it was the Russians, and you know, and now it's some more of Eastern Europeans. At the same time that has sort of fallen off a little bit, you know, our vocational training system in New York City has been gutted. I mean, it just doesn't exist the way that it once did. And so employers are really hungry and looking for people that want to make things and that have some training with the tools. So we're sort of nicely positioned, for better or for worse, to be able to provide individuals for those jobs in the sector in New York City.
Great, thank you so much. I'm going to ask some audience questions now. The first one is, I would love to learn more about alumni career trajectories. Are the panelists able to provide more information about alumni wages 1 to 5 years after graduating from the workforce development programs? And are they seeing graduates moving from entry-level positions to mid-level or senior positions? So if anybody wants to take a stab at that, please go ahead.
I feel like Renee should go first because I'm probably going to agree with everything she's saying.
Oh, and I was going to say, I'll go with Raquel. I do know that's a really great question. And I will say, I know the starting wage, and that's usually $17.25. The 1 to 5, I have to say, I don't know those numbers off the top of my head. So I'll let Tanya go, I'm sorry.
So just I can give an example. I mean, we tend to we track people really only for 2 years after graduation. So beyond 2 years, it's a little sketchy in terms of the information that we have. But I can give an example of someone who we placed in a small cabinet shop in Industry City. He started out, I think, at $16 or $17 an hour, and this was over 5 years ago. And he recently moved into a big fabrication studio in the Navy Yard, and he was hired at $30 an hour. So, the potential is there. I don't want to make it sound like every person that comes out of our program is able to do that, but there is the potential for them to move on in this field and to earn significantly more in a yearly salary.
Yeah, I'll say when our participants are in the training program, the first phase of the program, they're getting stipends, not wages. And so we're always trying to find a balance between good jobs and career paths. And so we're competing, all of us are, with dead end jobs at $25 an hour because of the economy. And so historically, since 2009, before the $15 an hour minimum rate, our average collectively has been, I believe, 16 and a half. But in the last 2 years, the starting has been somewhere around 17. And for our social enterprise, closer to like 22. And I don't know the exact figures 5 years out for the whole alumni community, but I know some of our senior manager level graduates who moved up are working at 25. And then, I know, again, anecdotally, like Scott's point, one of our graduates who was successful to land in a union role is like at 35 an hour. But within all of that, the realities are how you get people paid to be able to get trained and upskilled to even get into a union track. So the wages are really important, but the other issue is a really, really strong workforce training program or employer might have a long-term career track, but a wage of 16 or 17 at starting is less appealing if they can get a different opportunity at 22. So we're always trying to monitor and educate with our partners the sort of long game of how we motivate folks to be attracted to the good jobs. So it's a complicated answer, but I would say, I think in the last couple of years, it's been average of 20 or 21, just as things have necessarily been higher.
Yeah, that's really interesting to hear. Thank you all. What do you think needs to happen for New York City to see people like those in your programs flourishing in long-term green careers with career advancement?
I mean, what I have been sort of messaging consistently is that there needs to be, and I believe there is, a reevaluation of what is the actual living wage needed in New York City to thrive and survive. The working poor is just very scary, the volume of people, including our community members that are, we're getting jobs for. just recently I had a situation where there's a housing insecurity because they literally couldn't afford their rent even though they were working. So I think just reframing the reality of what is the benchmark of like livable wage in New York City. And then, to echo what I said previously, there needs to be investment to give people economic viability while they're getting trained for not just the first job, but the next job. And then, the ideal model is the union track, right? And so the version of a union pathway for all kinds of opportunities and employment, I think is a way forward, because it's security beyond just the moment, and it's an intentional plan of investment towards the future and advancements and benefits and security. And if you're in field jobs, weather doesn't keep you from getting paid, like things that are out of control. So I think more and more civil service opportunities and private employment opportunities that mirror that path, I think is really critical to consider.
Okay, thank you so much. Any tips on thorough community engagement for program recruitment? I'll say that again. Any tips on thorough community engagement for program recruitment?
Did you say thorough community recruitment? Okay. I think spending time and attention in intentional engagement with the stakeholders in the community is really critical, right? Because those are the folks that influence others, that we frame it as credible messengers, people who have been there forever and know that everyone. Like, creating alignment with those stakeholders is at a minimum a strong way to be successful in recruitment. And then role models, having examples of like having people see what is possible in others that they're motivated by, I think is also a successful approach.
And I don't know if this is exactly answering the question, but one thing that we like to do is, we have our social enterprise, and we have, a lot of partners that we do community engagement with. And so we often will take our training cohort to, for example, Earth Matter on Governor's Island. And we had a couple of interns there, and then they were there talking about, they graduated from the program, but then they went on to an internship and they got to see sort of the next step. And then as part of the Hort crew that works with our social enterprise, will often go to different community partners, and they're working in those places, on a more full-time basis. So it's just sort of, that's one way in which we try to do that also. It's just, mirroring the steps within, the training cohort to the social enterprise to then the work that we're doing in the community. I'm not sure if that's answering your question, but that's sort of what popped in my head.
Yeah, I think so. That's great. So another question here: how can we as normal people support organizations that are looking to create more full-time roles in the green industry?
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. How can we as normal people support organizations that are looking to create more full-time roles in the green industry? Is it routes like donating equipment? How can we get more full-time roles in the green industry outside of the work that you guys are doing?
I think if as individuals, if there are, connections that the organizations may not be aligned with, that, may not on the surface seem like it's a way. I mean, it's like bringing new audiences to the work, I think, is a very helpful thing, whether that's like by introduction to other potential employers, whether that's by social media influencing to like lift up the message of the brand of what we're trying to do, or you know, from a policy perspective, as a citizen, talking to your electeds about like what you think is needed to support, you know, I mean, election day is like the Water Act, the Bond Act. Like, I mean, just being a informed citizen and paying attention to the questions that are coming up in society about like what directions we should go in, that support the work, I think is important.
And I'll jump on that. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Well, I was just going to say that I think if you know people that hire people, let them know that we're out there. Let them know that we provide trained entry-level workers for their positions. That's probably the biggest, you know, the biggest thing that we're judged on, I think, is on, you know, we can train people, we can graduate them, but can we place them? And then will they stay in that job for 2 years? You know, that's the metrics that we need to hit, is can we keep people employed and on a career path for 2 years? That's what our funders are really looking at. So any employers that can hire our graduates are welcome and needed.
And I just want to expand what Tanya mentioned about you know, being informed citizens. It's also about being informed consumers and thinking about where the things you purchase come from, where they're made, and the environment and the communities that are impacted by those decisions. And those are things that you purchase as an individual for, you know, for your homes or you know, your household, but also for your businesses. And you know, it's really important to just be thoughtful and critical about where money goes, because in a lot of ways that is what determines job opportunities, and the marketplace is going to determine how many jobs we can create and keep in our city.
Great, thank you. I'd like to go back and kind of talk about change and how you all adapt to change, whether that's economic changes within the city, climate change. We talked a little bit about COVID changes that were kind of thrust upon us. But maybe Alexander, would you like to kind of start maybe with talking about climate change?
Yeah, absolutely. Trilox is a mission-based for-profit entity. So in addition to the work that we do in our community as part of our mission, climate change mitigation and environmental awareness is a critical part of what we do every day. We have built our company on reevaluating waste streams, essentially, and to reinvigorate and transform them into value-added, job-creating, sustainable products that we use every day. And so we're really built on change, and we approach things in a very different way. We take a research-driven approach by understanding the impact of the decisions that we make, rather than just chasing demand, which is typically what folks in our industry do. And that has allowed us to create really unique material streams and products, and to educate the design community around us about the decisions that they make, because the building industry has the largest impact of any sector. It has a huge carbon footprint, and there is a incredible potential in changing that dynamic in building with wood. Wood is the most sustainable material. It sequesters carbon as it grows, and it is solar powered, and it has a ton of other benefits in terms of its use and its impact physiologically and psychologically on those that are in spaces that are heavily with lots of wood in it. And so I I think change is not something to be feared. It's something to be considered and built into a model because it will always happen. And if we can be thoughtful about how and creative about how we approach the realities that are changing around us, we can actually turn them into assets.
Yeah, that's really great. Thank you. I think this will.
Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
I was just going to sort of jump back to the topic of COVID and kind of what, we had to be pretty nimble and we had to adapt and we had to kind of embrace new technologies to realign our program to the emerging world that it was at that time. And I mean, part of that was the great staff that we have and the support that we have from our executive team. But it forced us to sort of look at what we do and the changes that we had to make by moving online and running sort of hybrid sessions. In the end, I think made us stronger. We now have a Google Classroom that we had to develop that is wide and deep, and it has a tremendous amount of additional materials that we can plug into for our trainees to learn from and to grow from. And then like Zoom, as much as, I mean, we're on it right now, and as much as it's changed our lives, it enabled us to engage with employers in a much different way. We often did our mock interview sections with, volunteers from banks and other funders that, were looking for kind of service projects to do. And it was all great. And it was valuable, but it's nothing like having an industry professional come in and do a mock interview with one of our participants. And so, and most small business owners don't have the time in a day to come to our site, spend an hour travel each way and then an hour and a half on site interviewing our folks, when they can jump on a Zoom session and interview the entire class in an hour. It really boosted kind of our ability to engage with our employer partners, and we continue to use that tool and the technology. So.
Yeah, and to add on the technology front, I think it also was for our participants. A lot of times the participants that come to us tend to be hands-on workers. They're kind of afraid of computers. And so being remote for part of our programming and then hybrid, that definitely allowed us, saw a big divide with technology. I think we were all sort of oblivious that just think everyone has access to Wi-Fi or everyone has access to a computer. And that's something that we learned that quickly we learned that wasn't the case. And so we were able to provide, computers and hotspots so that our participants could continue with programming. And so that was a big piece. And just, seeing like the challenges and the anxiety it brought to our participants, and then helping walk them through and building a confidence with using a computer, because that is now a lot of times expected. If you're, looking for a job interview, sometimes it's going to be on Zoom. It's not going to be in person. So really, really like amping up the digital skills that typically we didn't do in our more of our green programs, because they were always meant to be more field-based. So that was definitely creating a more balance. And then just looking at what does that mean going forward? Are we looking, what kind of skills are we trying to continue to build with our participants? So there is more of a balanced level of experience, and then really helping with job placement.
Great. Thank you so much. This has been such a great conversation. I hope all of our viewers have learned a lot to take away here. For our closing remarks, I'd like to pass it back to Stephanie Lucas.
I'd just like to thank everyone for attending day one of Madison Square Park Conservancy's Horticulture Symposium, the Future Urban Jungle, Creating a Resilient Workforce. We hope to see you again tomorrow in person for part 2 of the symposium. We'll be meeting at the 11 Madison offices here in New York City. More information regarding these can be found in the chat. If you are in